Wait, what about this part?
Shh. Welcome to TBR, a podcast where two besties read. I'm Addi.
And I'm Alex, and join us as we reread,
Review,
and reevaluate our favorite books over the years.
Shh, I'm reading.
This week on TBR, we're covering The Hollow Boy by Jonathan Stroud, Part 3, The Bloody Footprints, Chapters 8 through 12. Hey, hello, and welcome to this week's TBR or Two Besties Read. My name is Alex, and I am here with the wonderful, the amazing, the incredible Addi. Addi, how are you doing, and what are you drinking today?
I'm doing great. I have an amaretto sour.
Oh!
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? So much goodness.
A little ASMR for our listeners. I have a Diet Coke, and it's half gone already, and I have a water as a standby.
I feel like you haven't had a Diet Coke in a while, so I'll accept it.
This week, we are covering the third part of The Hollow Boy, Part 3, The Bloody Footprints, which covers chapters 8 through 12.
Ooh.
And our question of the week this week is, what is a character from a movie or book series that was later introduced in the story that quickly became your favorite character?
I have so many.
Start listing.
I feel like I notoriously like characters that show up later. Just because I like the differing dynamics, because like you're built on like the main characters you know, and then you add another one, you're like, ooh, how is this puzzle piece gonna fit in here? So I usually like characters that are added later. I said at the beginning of this podcast when we started, I have been recently getting into reading books more. But so TV series ones that I have loved, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Toph, quickly became my favorite character. She's amazing. Top tier, powerful bender. Love her. I also had a phase where I was really into Once Upon a Time, and Captain Hook, or Hook, Killian. He was a great addition because he just added something different to the team, and his quote-unquote redemption arc, because I feel like he was already a decent guy beforehand, but his like arc that he has in the show was just so good. And also, another one of my favorite TV shows to watch is Parks and Recreation. And when they added Ben and Chris at the end of season 2, just made the show that much better. And Ben became my favorite character. But I'd say, like, book series, probably my number one is Finnick Odair. I love him. And I will never forgive Suzanne Collins. I don't understand.
It was so unnecessary.
His death and Primrose's death are so unnecessary, and I am coming for it. This is ridiculous.
I have a much shorter list.
Shorter list? I'm looking at your list right now, and it's like...
Okay, all right. But the
so
thing is, they're only from 3 series, because I cannot remember all of these characters in books. So these are ones that I've just read recently. So it's very Sarah J. Maas coded. So in Crescent City, I just read the 3rd book, and I love Lydia. Like, you get hints of her in, the 2nd book, I think. But the 3rd book, like, she becomes my favorite character, and I disliked a lot of the main characters from the normal one, and she just surpassed them on a level that is hard to beat because she's awesome. And then from the Throne of Glass series, later characters that I like are Rowan, Lysandra, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and Manon. I know you just started reading that, but when you get there, Addi, they're so good.
Don't tell me what book they show up then.
Oh, I can't even remember, let's be honest.
Okay.
The later ones. And then from Percy Jackson, I really like Nico.
Okay.
And Tyson too. He's a sweetie. But
he is a sweetie. I do remember Tyson. That's it. I don't think I ever met Nico.
Book 2.
I was like, yeah, I know. My minimal reading. I remember Tyson. I don't think I ever met Nico. Or if I did, I don't remember him.
He's book 3. He comes in more book 4, and then there's later series that encompass his character and have an arc of development.
I thought I really liked book 3, but now I realize like I didn't remember that he was there.
Okay, like he was there for like maybe 2 chapters worth, and then it's like, we killed your sister, and then they come back.
Spoilers! You're ruining this, Alex.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
It's like when you told me in Throne of Glass, you're like, oh, just wait for the dragons. And I'm like, there are dragons?
I'm sorry. We were talking about Abraxos, the name. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's from Throne of Glass. I forgot that you had started reading that.
Oh, my gosh. No.
I love him, too. He's a later character.
I know. You don't have any from the Harry Potter series that you liked that were introduced later?
I'm trying to think of later characters. The thing is, my favorite character overall is Hermione.
Oh, yeah.
I love Harry.
Ron
is good in the book, in the movie not so much. Ginny's great in the books. She's a later character, at least sort of.
Yeah.
Development-wise. Luna Lovegood's also good.
I forgot her. Okay, sorry. Up with Finnick is going Luna Lovegood. I love her. I would name a child after her. That's how much I love her. Sorry. That was really intense, but that's my love for them.
I was like, I will die for her.
It's his past die. I will name my firstborn child.
Oh, God, just like Harry and the awful names he named his children. I'm looking at you, Sirius Albus Dumbledore, or whatever his name is.
Oh my gosh, what if... Okay, spoiler alert for people that haven't finished the book. What if Kipps actually died? Okay, at the end of book 5. And then Lockwood and Lucy had a child, and his name was Kipps.
I would hate it.
Oh my god, I would die. What if they named him, like, Donald Kipps?
No. No. Maybe as a middle name it'd be okay, but... Ooh. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Oh my gosh. You know what I would love? This is a fan fiction that someone needs to write. They have a kid, okay? And they name him, like, Donald something, or, like, something Donald. And whatever is the other name they choose, let's say it's, like, Henry. Then Skull's just like, oh, I'm so glad you named him after me. And it's, like, the big plot twist. That's how you figure out his name.
Oh my god.
And they're like, no, we didn't want to name our child after Skull. But they didn't know.
He would wait. He would, like, wait until after the birth certificate's signed, and then he'd just, like, release it.
Yeah, or he'd, like, subtly leave hints while, like, Lucy's, like, pregnant. Or, like, leading up to it. You know, just, like, plug different names, but, like, put it just, like, oh, yeah, there's that Henry case, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, Henry. And then Lucy's like, I really like the name Henry. And
then he's, like, silent so he doesn't push the issue, and then he drops a reveal. That would be so
oh, my
Skull.
gosh. Someone please write this fan fiction. I would die. I would die.
Me too. Someone write it, please. Okay. Our last episode, we covered the Hollow Boy Part 2.
Whoa.
Whoa, what?
Alex, you did not have the dramatic on the previous episode of TBR.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
You've got to say it dramatically.
Previously on TBR, we covered Part 2, Whitechapel Nights, chapters 4 through 7. As the Black Winter begins, Lockwood and Co. find themselves out on cases every night. Yet much to Lockwood's chagrin, the trio has not yet been invited by Barnes to help tackle the raging Chelsea outbreak.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Despite her exhaustion and denial regarding the need for another agent, Lucy Carlisle finds herself reflecting on Jessica Lockwood's room and the trauma that Lockwood shared with them regarding its former occupant. She also finds the time to test and further expand her talents on cases, connecting with the desires of a ghost on a case with Lockwood, and again on a solo case. After taking a much-needed visit to see her family, and ending the visit early, Lucy arrives back to Portland Row with a new sense of purpose, only to find Lockwood and George fawning over a new hire, an assistant named Holly. And that's what happened on TBR.
And that's what you missed on TBR! I should have done like Glee, like da da da
yes.
da 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 da.
I love it.
Listeners, let us know if you want us to like recap in the way of a certain show.
Chapter 8 starts with Holly leaving to catch her afternoon bus and Lucy getting mad at Lockwood, demanding why they hired someone without her.
And George avoiding the situation.
George so gallantly walks her to the bus.
He's like, I'm gonna dip out.
He thinks he's slick, but Lucy is like pissed off, and Lockwood kind of puts the blame back on her, and he's like, well, you said we needed an assistant.
Yeah, and he's being so dumb.
This part made me so mad because in my head, when we were covering our last episode, I was like, oh, she was probably gone for her family at like, I don't know, a week, 5 days. It's been 3 days, and they interviewed and hired someone without her. They could have at least interviewed her and been like, great, we'll make the final decision when our third colleague comes back. They need a say in this as well. And they just hired her without Lucy's input, which I think is one of the main problems, because honestly, I think if Lucy had been there for interviews and was like, well, this person sucks. You know how Lucy is with her judgments.
Yeah.
Even if Holly was like exceeds expectations, I think if Lucy had been a part of the discussion, she wouldn't hold so much animosity towards Holly.
And I think this is a good question. Do you think that if Lucy was there, they still would have hired her?
I don't know, because I don't know if they would have done the skull test. I think that would have freaked Holly out.
Yeah, I mean, if Lucy was there, I think she would have been like, you need to give her the 3 tests. However, I do understand that Lockwood is like, we're hiring her to be an assistant. She's not going to be on cases, which then pisses me off later when he brings her on a case. I think if Lucy was there, I'd like to think that she would be a little bit more open towards Holly, but I think she would still harbor some bias of her letting Holly be part of the team. And also, this has been said before, Lucy's a creature of habit. She's not really open to change, just like Lockwood. She literally, like, her and Lockwood are actually pretty similar in that respect, that they don't like things changing. And so, I mean, not to be like a Lockwood defender, but it is very big of him that he was willing to add another person to the team. I'm just saying the timing wasn't right at all.
I agree. I get the jealousy angle, especially when that person is forcing you to reflect on your own self and your own insecurities. I just hate the double standard. And then we see this Holly character, and not only is she not getting the hard scrutiny tests where Lucy thought that she was like an idiot because she couldn't feel anything. And they're like, haha, it's a cup. It's just a cup. You shouldn't. And like we had talked about that. That was like an important test because it's like, are you going to tell the truth or are you going to lie?
It's trust.
So I really think that Holly should have had that. Now, we could leave the skull out of it, or we could have modified the test because Lucy herself has said, hey, this watch was used in serial murders. Let's not use it as a stupid test, you know?
Yeah.
They could have found another artifact. God knows they have enough. But I still think that's important. And then there's the double standard of how George and Lockwood are acting towards Holly. Like, Lucy even says, I was Miss Carlisle for months. And Lockwood's like, well, it's because of you that I'm so informal now. And he's so, like, genial with Holly right away. And they're, like, the best of buds. And everyone's fawning over her. And so is George. George isn't doing the freeze out, the questioning, the deep-rooted, like, mistrust that he had with Lucy either.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I think, yes, it is a double standard. But I do also think, like you said, it is a testament to how much Lucy has had an impact on them. That, in a way, she's helped these boys mature at least a little bit, where George is willing to be a little bit more open with people that come into the group, and Lockwood is wanting to be open himself up more. And that's what he did at the end of book 2. And he's really trying. And, like, Lucy gets, like, a little pissed off in this book, or not this book, in this portion with Lockwood, that he hasn't opened up enough and that, like, she deserves more. And I have an opinion on that we get there. But I think that it is, I am happy that Lockwood is willing to open up and be so nice to Holly and be informal with her and try and be there for her. And also, like, I mean, granted, Lockwood was being very formal to Lucy in book 1, but he was doing the exact same thing. Like, literally going over, like, above and beyond to make sure she was comfortable, making sure that she was, like, feeling included, trying to get her and George to get along, even though he knew there was a line there. So I think, yes, it seems a lot different than how he was treating Lucy in book 1, but also he was at a different stage with his emotional maturity in book 1 than he is now. Like, he has developed himself. But my problem is the hiring her while she's gone. I have a huge issue with that. That is not smart at all. And I get he's hiring her as an assistant. It's not like they're adding another colleague to the team that is going to be out in the field, basically. And the other thing is, like, he brings up that she has really good connections. And also that kind of pisses me off because I'm like, wow, so you want to use Lucy for her talents because you think she's amazing. You're using George so he can get you your research. And you're using Holly so that she can get you the connections you need.
I have a thought on cleaning the house. It's nothing big. My main thing is crossing boundaries. So they hired this person without Lucy's consent. Holly goes up and cleans her bedroom, like, twice. Like, before she'd even met Lucy, she went up and cleaned her bedroom. And then later in the case, she goes up and cleans her bedroom. And Lucy is a very private person. Like, she likes her messes. I think that crosses such a line to just assume that you have free reign over the entire house.
I agree.
And that becomes a problem later that Lucy doesn't say anything and it's going to blow up.
Mainly because, like, even if you go stay in a hotel, at least in the States, like, if you go to stay in a hotel, they ask you, like, hey, is it okay if we come, like, every other day or every day? Like, would you like room service? They ask about that. And that's even a service that they provide that's included in your hotel fee. Like, I would think if you're, like, renting from someone, like, you would ask before they start, like, cleaning your room. So, yeah, that crosses a line for me. But in this part where she's arguing with him, back to the story, actually, Lockwood knows he's in the wrong here, and he's genuinely trying to cover up this fuck up that he had for, like, 100%.
He's trying to butter her up.
Yeah, he is. And it's not working out well. But we do learn a little bit about Holly, that she's 18 years old. She worked at Rotwell's for years and actually got pretty high up under Steve Rotwell. And so, like, and she has some talents that she can use, like, in an emergency, but for the most part, she is just fine with doing, like, secretary work, basically, which is what they hired her to do. How old is our crew at this point again?
Lockwood's 15. He's the same age that Jessica was when she died. I don't know about Lucy or George.
We have to put in reference. We're, like, basically, like, freshmen, sophomores in high school. Holly's, like, a senior. That's the emotional maturity.
I do like that we get these puzzle pieces with Holly early on. But one thing I do have to say, I really like that Holly's taking charge. Do I think it's a little aggressive from the start? Yeah, I do. But she is taking her secretary duties seriously. And she knows this team is overworked. And they have 5 cases. And the team's like, oh, God. 5 cases. And all of them seem boring except for one. And she's like, don't worry. I canceled them all except for the one. And they're all, like, flabbergasted. She's like, I already sent all the clients the information they need. Like, you guys have worked too hard. She's giving them days off now. They can work as a team together.
Yeah, which is what, I think we were talking about this last chapter, which is ultimately, I think, what Lockwood wants, because he likes when the 3 of them can work together, because I think then he has more control over their George and Lucy's safety. So I think it makes him happier that Holly's doing that. But yeah, damn girl, like, epic slay for Holly, because I don't know about you, we love a responsible adult, you know, or just a responsible human being, you know, and she is helping them move up as far as they can in their organization, and is also helping them realize that they don't need to help every single person. Like, they don't need to help every single dumb person that can ultimately help themselves at the end of the day. Like, you need to genuinely help the people that, like, it's literally a problem, like, it's a matter of life and death. You know, like, those are the cases that are going to move them up in this world, they're going to learn a lot from, and that they're going to get, like, they're just going to like it at the end of the day. I think, like, any company you work for, yeah, it's great to have, like, some, like, a backlog of, not, like, simple tasks, but, like, tasks that almost, like, don't take a ton of, like, don't have a ton of challenges, don't have a ton of risks with them, but you do want a few of those challenging and risky projects to have, because those are what test you so that the smaller ones are better, you know? It works together.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeji, Lucy is back.
Whew, we get a really good line that we sort of already talked about with reflecting your insecurities, but the line is, and this is after, like, a page worth of, Holly is so perfect, Holly is so prim and proper, she always looks nice, which we know that, like, physical looks have been a problem with Lucy. We saw that with Kat Godwin, where Kat's more put together and Lucy always feels like a schlump when she's compared side by side. But the line that I love is, she was all smooth and clear and shiny, like a mirror. And like a mirror, she reflected back your imperfections. And that's, like, the root of the problem that Lucy has with Holly. Holly is put together. She's confident. She knows what she's doing. We don't see any self-doubt yet. But, like, her appearance is together, and mentally she's all good to go. Like, she is on it. And Lucy sometimes isn't.
Yeah.
So it's not even, like, right now that she dislikes Holly as a character. She doesn't dislike her as a person, sort of. But she dislikes what Holly as a person reflects back on her.
Yep. If I saw someone that had it all together, I would feel really insecure about myself. I still do to this day, especially as an adult. I think that, because, I mean, everyone's on different, like, time schedules and different waves of life, and, like, they're all doing different things, that it's hard to, like, sit there and not compare yourself to where other people are at. And I honestly think anyone that thinks that they don't is lying to themselves. Like, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Sorry if you don't agree, listeners. And we have the funniest conversation that is so fake. I don't think this conversation actually happened. It's so biased to, like, what Lucy thought.
Listeners, girl fighting, very different. That is not physical at all. It is all mind games. It is all the inflection and the tone and the smile. It's a mental game.
What women fighting is like, and bullying, is subtle statements here and there. Like, you know, people are talking behind your back, but they maybe aren't. You know, like, it's the subtle looks in the hallway. It's the snide comments and snide conversations. It's not anything big of, like, trying to get anyone back. For being written by a guy, there are some moments in these chapters that I'm like, yes, this is it.
I will pinpoint all of them because there are so many passive-aggressive comments or, like, snide comments said with a smile that you're like, there it is. And if you said it to someone, like, if if you try to explain it to someone, you sound crazy. You're like, she said that my pajamas were saggy.
Not saggy. How dare they?
Yeah. Yeah. Holly says some mean things at the end of this chapter.
She does.
She does. She didn't have to, but she does. And that is girl fighting.
It is. But I also think that this conversation is a very good example, like you said, of people that work on different time schedules. So Lucy kind of procrastinates. She's fine with having more of a mess. Like, that's just how she operates. And everyone works on a different time schedule and like kind of has different like values of how they like to keep their space, how they approach like, you know, personal hygiene or just personal cleanliness. And you see that Lucy and Holly are very different in that aspect.
Oh, yeah. And I get both sides of this fake situation.
Yeah.
Like, I can see both sides so clearly, and I can see how they're both mad at each other.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like Holly almost was like waiting for Lucy to like, if this was a real conversation, I can see that Holly would be waiting for Lucy to like clean up her stuff maybe sometime, is just kind of waiting to see and like maybe dropping subtle hints. And then it's kind of like the end and she doesn't want to be like, bitch, move your stuff. You know, she's just like, hey, if you could move it, that'd be really great. Yeah, I'll move it in a second. Okay, but we're going to be doing something in like 20 minutes and they're coming in 5 minutes. So could you do it soon? You know, like I can see her trying to like skirt around it without being rude. And I think for Lucy, again, I think her bias towards Holly, like her hatred towards Holly is just so strong that she's only seeing like these snarky comments back at her, you know? I think it's very tainted. I don't think that like if this was an actual conversation, I don't foresee Holly being necessarily negative with it, you know?
No, I'm sure Holly was like, this is so awkward.
Yeah.
Like, and what we don't see is Holly's interactions with the other team.
Yeah.
Like, we see them all through the scope of Lucy's eyes. So I guarantee she's like, hey, George, can you pick up your pants and put them away at some point? Like, or just did it. And George is like, oh, how nice. But Lucy's like, this is a personal affront to me.
Yeah. Again.
So, yeah, we just don't see the other
We don't. But again, another reason I really want season 2 of this show because I want to see what those other conversations were like. Just saying. Bring it back. Anyways. Moving on. Then we have the funniest description of Lockwood and George, like, theoretically watching this and being like proud dads smiling in the corner, like, wow, look how well they're getting along.
Look what we did. Good job, us.
And Skull is taking Lucy's side this whole time.
Skull is the ultimate best friend. He's like, I know you don't like her, so I don't like her. Also, have you seen the way she talks to Lockwood?
Yeah.
Like, he is on her side.
I like
ride or die.
I like him. He's like, and she's like, I don't like her either. And she's like, well, what do you have against her? He's like, she doesn't have time for me. Like, she doesn't want me.
She wants everything under her thumb. She thinks we're dirty.
She wants me gone. Like, oh my gosh, it's so funny. Yeah, and then Lucy has a whole thing where you really see that she's just pushing down her emotions this whole time. And she has a rude comment. Well, Holly has a rude comment at the end of this that again shows like differing personalities, but very much Holly does not need to make the comment the way she did.
I'm telling you, it's the saggy pajama comment. She could have literally just said, hey, I think this client is like prestigious. She used one of her Rotwell contacts. Like, it's someone not on Whitechapel Lane, so it's someone like with more money, and they expect a certain little something with their clients. So she could have been, hey, clients come in at 10. They're really specific on what they want for their clients. Reputation means a lot to them. It would mean a lot. It would go a long way with this client if we were all there promptly and dressed very nicely. That's all she has to say. She doesn't have to say, well, she wouldn't appreciate it if you were wearing your saggy gray pajamas.
Yep.
And then Lucy is fighting Esmeralda and is like so mad and stabs her. And then her rapier like swipes out of her hand. And Holly is so snarky. She's like, ooh, I'd hate to be that ghost.
I think she was like slightly impressed, but also just like, I hope I'm not them. Like,
it's like when you're trying to be cool and you trip in front of someone, it just ruins the effect. Lucy's like getting all of her anger out, and then the straw ghost disarms her, and of course Holly's so fucking snarky with it. She's so rude. And like, if they were friends at that point, it'd be very funny, but they're not.
No.
They're like adversaries. It's going to be an enemies to friends situation, folks. But it's going to take a couple
It is going to
books.
take a while. It's going to take a lot of pain.
Chapter 9. The client shows up, a Miss Fiona Wintergarden, who is a lady that looks like a strict librarian.
Yeah.
That's the vibes I got.
Yeah, really. And Lucy is just slightly annoyed that Holly is sitting behind all of them taking notes, but is too close to Lockwood. And I just hate that she's saying the worst in this situation. She's like, I would never dare sit that close. And I'm like, okay, but also let's understand you were a little timid when you started. Holly is very much a perfectionist and she is not afraid to do the right job. Like, of course she's going to sit close so she can hear what she's doing to do her job correctly.
Well, also, like, if Holly sat next to Lockwood on the same level as George and Lucy would have a fucking fit about it.
Yeah.
She'd be like, how dare she think that she's on our level? But because Holly's sitting behind and has, like, Lockwood's ear, she's like, she's trying to be number 2 in this situation.
Like, she's literally just doing her job. Like, I would just like to note, remember our color conversation in the last BBC? They mentioned how Miss Wintergarden is sitting there and the fire is putting a shadow of red over her face. So there's slightly some evil undertones there.
Yeah, slightly. This is not subtle at all. I hate this client. This is, of all our interactions with the clients,
this is the worst one.
First of all, I do want to note there's some good British humor in there where she says, footprints, bloody footprints. And then George is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you're this upset. She's like, no, I mean, they're literal bloody footprints. Haha, that's funny. That's good writing.
Bloody footprints. That was terrible, British. Please delete that from the episode.
We're keeping it in.
No. We're going to get letters. We're going to get complaints. They're going to come for me.
But the gist of this conversation is that there is a phenomenon where there are some bloody footprints showing up on this grand staircase.
I know, but what do they look like?
Get out. It took me like 10 seconds.
I know.
I just said they're bloody.
Your face was pure confusion. Sorry.
Oh, God. Okay,
I like this lady that was like, you were cheap and free. That's why I chose you.
Oh, God. Well, she's like, I usually go with higher up agencies, but whatever.
I'll settle for you.
None of the adults in the household are seeing these footprints, but all of, like, the servants and the younger staff are seeing them, and it's kind of freaking them out. She says that this needs to be solved, like, subtly because she has friends in the Sunrise Corporation, and she cannot allow her house to get a dubious reputation, which is why she's finally coming to an agency. But then we get all of these little, like, tidbits of, oh, these bloody footprints have been appearing for years, and she's done nothing about them. And this is my favorite part of this conversation. She goes into this grand story about the staircase, and, like, all of them are, like, resigned, like, God,
here we go.
She just wants to hear herself talk. And then Holly's like, excuse me, ma'am, we don't have time to listen to your story about your pet mouse that got parachuted. And she's like, well, it's really important. It's really important.
She's like, it really is not important. Yeah, I put that as yellow. I was like, honestly, yes, Holly, we stand. This is slay. Great.
I love it.
I did want to go back. There was a piece of writing that Stroud has that I thought was really good. It's when Lucy's describing this woman and, like, kind of her persona that she's putting off. It says that, as I met her gaze, I took away the impression of a humorless, rather unintelligent person for whom only prim correctness and snobbery kept the terrors of the world at bay. And I want to note that because I'm going to keep bringing up, it's people hiding what they truly feel, like all of these chapters. Every single one. It's the subtle undertones of how people are feeling. Everyone's suppressing their emotions this whole entire book, and it just shows it in this client especially. She's not showing how scared she is. She's been covering up this case for years and not doing anything about it. It keeps happening. People just, like, suppressing stuff. Just saying.
Yes, very themes of this book. Then she goes on to talk about how the bloody footprints start from the bottom of the house and go up all 3 levels. So it starts in the kitchen, goes up towards the attic.
Yeah, there's 5 floors, right?
Yeah, there's 5 floors. Lockwood asks if there's anything like, oh, was there a crime of passion in this house? Was there any, like, murder? And she's like, haha, no. No violent or passionate incident whatsoever has ever occurred. And then Lockwood has this cheeky little line where he says, I can believe it. But then he goes and he's like, what are you not telling us? Like, this doesn't really make sense. It's just footprints. Why are we here?
Yeah.
And then she says, well, it's not my fault, but there was an incident and it's not my fault. I acted correctly. It's been going on for years. I haven't been neglecting any duties.
And they're like, but wait, but what
It's
actually
been so
happened?
rare.
What
Yeah.
happened?
So she hired 3 night watch children to take a peek. They stayed for 2 nights. The first night they saw the footprints. The second night they were like very panicked.
One of them left.
One of them was found curled up at the stairs, freaking out and had to be put in a mental institution. And they're like, the outcome's not favorable. She's probably not going to do well because she lost her mind. And the third one died, was found at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah, you got like pushed basically over like the edge of the stairs, which the spiral staircase is made of mahogany. That is mahogany! Sorry.
Mahogany? Okay, first of all, I hate this lady because everything is, well, I did what I could. I did my best. Like, all of the trauma that's happened, she's reflecting back on herself and is like, I'm not to blame. Just like, ma'am, children who are 9 to 10 years old died. Like, check your fucking self. You are at fault.
I think she's trying to reassure herself because she knows that she's guilty. Like, she knows it's her fault. She knows she should have done something sooner. And, like, you see that a lot with older generation people. They just try to, like, put off the blame. Like, well, it wasn't really me. It was someone else. And it's like, okay, just own up that you made a mistake, that it's your fault. You know, and maybe there is some part of her that won't admit fault, but I think a little bit of her subconsciously is trying to, like, shut down that she's the problem.
Yeah, she's trying to deflect the blame. Again, Holly speaks up and is like, ma'am, you are at fault. These kids were children. You should have had Deep Prac there from the start. This is wrong of you.
And George also speaks up and is like, it's time for cake. That would make us
Yeah.
feel all that much better. I've been waiting this whole time. We've been waiting on you, Miss Wintergarden. Please eat the damn cake. And then he hands it out to everyone.
He just wants carrot cake, which,
Same.
that's fair, George. Me too.
Yep. We love you, George. So Lucy says that she gulped hers down like an antisocial seabird.
What kind of bird did you think of? Because I thought of like a pelican.
Yeah, that's what I thought of, basically.
Or like a seagull being like, mine.
Mine.
Of course, Holly deflects her cake, which Lucy finds a personal affront.
Yeah, and I also wonder, we'll never know how much, like, what we hear from the other characters is exactly what they said, or if Lucy's actually paraphrasing it. So did Holly actually go, I don't need any, you know? Or like, was she just like, oh no, I don't need anything. I'm good. We don't know. I mean, the audiobook narrator makes it sound super sassy, I will say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds very much like the mean bully in high school. No thanks, Lucy. You tuck in. I'm good. That's how it sounds. It sounds like very like, I'm good. And it's like, I honestly think it probably would have been said like, oh no thanks, Lucy. You tuck in. I'm good.
That's how I read it. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a Holly defender, but maybe it's just because I see both sides. And I also think Lucy is a little bit flawed, but so is Holly. There are points where I understand Holly. There are also points where I dislike Holly because again, it's stuff that I'm insecure about / I don't relate to. But I think probably like 80% of the time, Holly's not being that terrible.
No. I think it's, again, Lucy's own insecurities that she's like, well, Holly didn't want it. And she said that I should still eat it, which means Holly thinks I'm fat. Like that spiraling of the brain where it's like, Holly literally just said she didn't feel like eating it. So let's check ourselves.
Also, she's probably trying to take notes, so she's probably like ate beforehand. I can't eat and write at the same time. Maybe it's just me. Anyways, and we figure out that Miss Wintergarden is wearing a liar.
Yes.
A liar for a liar.
Dang.
Which means that she's
Yes.
probably in the Orpheus Society. Dun,
Yes,
dun,
she does
dun.
charitable work for them.
Oh
Dun, 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 dun.
gosh. But yeah, this lady is really dumb because then she drops at the end. She's like, oh yeah, there were 2 ghosts with this haunting. And they're like, you were gonna just drop this now? Like, we've been talking
Yeah.
this whole time. Like,
The most important information, and she forgot about it because she wasn't sure whether or not to take it seriously.
this lady's dumb. Okay, so chapter 10, they all agree that she's a terrible woman also. They all hate her. And then they head off to the case over in Hanover Square. And I have a purple moment. It says, a strong wind was blowing, and the naked branches of the trees did the thing all naked branches do in the winter with the daylight slowly failing. They rasped and rustled like giant papery hands being rubbed together. The world was heavier with unease. And you can just hear that. Like if you go like, yeah, that sounds like the trees. I heard that and I was like, yes. I like this description because I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it.
I like it because it really personifies the house.
After that, though, again, where I'm showing that Lucy has an extreme bias against Holly is because she's like, oh yeah, George was researching and then Holly was back at Portland Road doing neat things with paper clips. Lucy, come on. She's not just looking at paper clips going, neat. But yeah, it's another Lucy and Lockwood adventure.
She's so excited to be alone with Lockwood. I want to know about the Berkeley Square case, especially since Lucy said it's one of her favorites and it sounded dangerous.
You know, it hasn't been mentioned in a while.
Mrs. Barrett's tomb.
The tomb. You need to lose your voice again so you can come back and be like, that tomb.
God, let me get the plague and then come back here. There was a moment that I did 4 asterisks because I really like. It says, it was a funny thing about being an agent, something Lockwood had once said. You were admired and loathed in equal measure. After dark, you represented order and all good things. They left to see you then. In daylight, you were an unwelcome intrusion into everyday life. A symbol of the very chaos that you kept at bay.
I feel like at times, especially for kids in our world, that's relatable. Where you're good for one thing, and then after you are done with that or you move on, they don't want you anymore, you're a nuisance.
You did your job, get out.
Yep.
And then there's this part with Lockwood that I am so frustrated by. He asks, hey, I know you've had some concerns. How's it getting on with Holly? And then Lucy starts being like, well, it's not so easy. I do find sometimes. And Lockwood's like, great.
He is not listening, and also, like, he's trying in this moment to be like, isn't she great? Like, she's strong-willed. She wasn't afraid to stand up to someone. I know you had concerns, but, like, I think she's really great. And it's like, there are 3 things I'm noticing in this moment. 1, Lockwood is not picking up that Lucy is not comfortable talking about Holly, that she doesn't like her. He's not picking up on that. So, Lockwood, strike 1. 2, he's trying to show, I think it's a benefit, he's trying to show similarities between Holly and Lucy because Lucy's also very headstrong and she's not afraid to speak up against herself. And if anything, like, she's growing more confident to be able to do that. Like, the first book, maybe like halfway through the second, I think she'd stand up to George and Lockwood, but she wouldn't really stand up to like anyone else. You know, like, she grows in confidence as it is. So I think he's like trying to be like, see, like, Holly's really great. She's all these things that you're growing to be, you know? But then next strike is that he's still avoiding mentioning how he messed up. And anytime Lucy's trying to say anything negative, he avoids it. And that's just like a common theme with Lockwood is anytime anything hard or negative comes, he'll blow up about it or he'll pent up all this stuff. And then just like while he's penting it up, he just avoids every single time. He swerves.
It's like when we saw that he wasn't like exactly thrilled that Lucy connected with that ghost when they worked the case together, and we thought he was going to say something and then nothing happened, and like it gets briefly mentioned in this chapter, but on Lockwood's checklist it's like, have a conversation with Lucy about Holly, and he's like, how's Holly?
Check.
Okay, I asked the words.
She's also stubborn. Check. She's also pretty but not as pretty as you. Check. George likes her. Check. We are proud fathers. Check.
And she has small feet.
Check. She made sandwiches. Double check.
Then George comes in with the receipts, as always, and he's like, yeah, so much for that old biddy claiming her daddy's house had never seen a spot of violence. There's murder.
Murder. And so they start walking around the house, and they find that there's leftover salt from when the other girl was there, which is kind of creepy.
That's probably the only reason she didn't die. Let's be real. She spilled salt.
Honestly. They give this huge description of the house, and Alex, I have to know, what were you seeing in your head? Did you have like a specific like thought of what you thought this house looked like? Because I did.
Not that I can really think of, gonna be honest. This is something I never do. It's because I was tired and I was running out of time to read these chapters. I kind of like saw that this part was about the house and was like, la 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 la.
Alex!
Skipped past it. So it's like, I know that there's a nice like staircase and it's pretty fancy, and I know the part about like, oh, the servants' quarters. No decorations there. Like,
okay, you want to know what I imagined?
Yeah, hit me with it.
Okay, so I pictured a combo of 2 movies / TV shows I've seen. Elizabeth Swann's house in Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, like you walk in and it's like there's the spiral staircase around the wall. So I imagined kind of like that spiral staircase.
Okay.
But then also the feeling of it going up. Like, I'm going to say this TV show. I need listeners to know. I don't like this show. I have watched this show against my will, and I have not finished it. Blair Waldorf's house or apartment in Gossip Girl. There's like a spiral staircase. I picture a combo of the two. I, for some reason, had those two in my head.
There is a blue moment when they go into this room with all these, like, paintings. That's, like, their home base, and they have their sandwiches. They listen to what George is saying. And George is just like, one day we should do this somewhere nice, you know, have a picnic where nothing's gonna want to kill us. It would be quite fun. And then Lockwood's like, well, what even would we talk about? Come to think of it, what did kids even do before the problem? They didn't have jobs, did they? What did they do? Go to school? Life must have been so dull.
It's the second time Stroud has had a fourth wall break in these novels. And it's just so good. I'm just like, what would kids be doing? Stare at the camera. Like,
you're not working.
You're reading a fucking book. Do your homework.
It just makes me sad.
It makes me sad. I was more laughing at all of us being like, it was time to sit and listen to George. And I was like, settle in, girls. It's story time. It's George time. We get a little tale of Tom. 'Twas the summer of '83. All was right in the house. And then the son of a rich guy murdered Thomas Weber and went to jail. How did he kill him? He stabbed him with a knife in the kitchen and then ran up the stairs and was killed at the top. And then the murderer went to a psychiatric ward and died there after he tried to run away but was hit by a carriage.
Beautiful. I loved
Thank
it.
you.
It's a great recap.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to use the voice.
Lockwood has a good leadership moment. He says, this is not a normal case. People have died. Let's be safe.
Why does Lucy think that Cook's the spirit doing all of this? I think you gotta know it's little Tom.
Lucy, in this case, makes me so mad.
She's being dumb.
She just projects all of these things onto these ghosts and comes up with these stories. And it's like, you know you can't trust ghosts. You talk about how you can't trust Skull all the time. Why all of a sudden? And I get, okay, she's connecting with these ghosts. She's having some emotional connections. Yeah, okay, that a little sympathy. Yeah, but you cannot trust that blindly.
No.
And you cannot make up stories for them and then try to get it to fit. Even in later chapters, she acts like she is the reference and the guide. So she's like, maybe it could be the tiles. And Holly's like, well, what if it's the staircase? And she's like, that's dumb.
And I'm like, that's actually that's what I was thinking. And I'm like,
yeah.
I was like raising my hand like, me too. Oh, never mind. Lucy thinks it's dumb.
Remember when a couple books back we thought that the screaming staircase was the source? Like, come on. You cannot be discounting these things just because you don't like someone.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
You are not the ultimate know-all of all of these ghosts. The entire thing with the problem is no one knows. Yeah. No one knows what causes the source. No one knows, like, how it starts or why it starts. You cannot be assuming that certain ghosts are causing this. Like, that's going to get you killed.
Lockwood has a game plan. George is going to the basement. Lucy's going to the second floor. And he's going to go to the top floor. And they're just going to all observe and then report back. So they're not going to try and take on the ghosts. And I just want to note, Lockwood goes to the most dangerous floor, probably.
I like these rules that Holly's implementing. She is like, hey, at Rotwell's, we would do a 2-day haunting mission. Let's observe night 1. And night 2, you do action. So smart. Why were they not doing that before?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, like, Lucy's annoyed. She's like, of course he's bringing up Holly. I'm like, honestly, Lockwood's trying to do a good job because he could just take credit and be like, hey, we're doing this, you know? And, like, Lucy would have gone with it. George wouldn't have questioned it. But he's trying to, like, kind of like he would have done if Lucy had, like, brought it forward when she first started. He'd be like, hey, Lucy had this idea. Let's try it. You know, he's at least giving Holly credit to kind of show how, like, she actually does a great job at contributing to the team, even though she's not here. Also, Lockwood is just like, all right, Lucy, you stand there. Do you have Skull? Do you have the chains? Like, he's like, do you have everything you need? And I don't know why. I'm just picturing Lucy in, like, a wrapped... She's not like this. In my head, though, I'm like, Lucy wrapped in a blanket with some popcorn, Skull close in, like, some more, like, stuffed animals, because that's me at night. But just, like, sitting there in her little thing, like, all right, ghost, let's go.
Yeah. Are you good? You need more popcorn?
Yeah.
Great.
Just, like, throwing it over the staircase to George, and he's at the bottom, like, catching it in his mouth.
Yeah, and then we get Skull being a bestie, and he's like, so I heard Lockwood yelling at you. Maybe you should connect with a ghost.
Yeah.
He is a pot stirrer.
He is.
He's trying to cause trouble.
It's like, I wouldn't listen to him. If you want to make psychic contact with a ghost killer, why not? I say, go girl.
Yeah. He's a girl's girl. And then he makes this little joke. He's like, you're not as perceptive as you think. You're thinking about Lockwood too much right now to even notice that there's something creeping up behind you right now, and it's George.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. Lucy also mentions that she's like, oh, my stomach wasn't feeling great because I was thinking of Lockwood all alone up
Once
there.
again.
Must have been indigestion. I'm like, yeah, sure, indigestion.
Yeah. Indigestion of
Love.
butterflies, maybe. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Okay, I want to talk about this. So George comes upstairs and he is randomly like, oh, do you have gum?
George, get back in your circle.
But can we talk about this? Why do you think George went upstairs just randomly?
I think he was just checking on her.
You think so? Because she's talking to Skull and he's only hearing the other side. And if he's hearing only from the other side, if he's hearing, he wasn't telling me off. You were so obvious. I wouldn't do anything stupid like that. You don't have a nose. Tell me about the stairs. Thanks, I could have told you that. No. I think, and he brings this up later, I think, is scared that Lucy's going to try her talent connecting with a ghost because I think Lockwood would have brought it up in the 3 days that she was gone. Of how they needed to get an assistant because he's worried about Lucy and that we need to keep an eye on her. Because he does bring that up in book 2 about George when stuff is going wrong. He's like, we need to keep an eye on George. He brings it up multiple times. So Lockwood is in tune when his colleagues are putting themselves in danger. So I think he brought it up to George. George hears this from downstairs. Because think about it, like George is only 1 floor below Lucy, right? Because she's on the ground floor. Lockwood's like 2 floors above her. So, like, he's probably not hearing any of this. George is. So I think George is, like, coming upstairs, 1, to check on her, but 2, because I think he hears this and is like, I hope that Skull is not telling her to connect with it.
So I feel like he's like, oh, she's on the floor alone. I can maybe hear some snippets of conversation. Lockwood just warned her, and she didn't fight back about not doing it. Like, we know Lucy's stubborn. Maybe I should just pop up and just check to make sure she's in the chains. George is a good friend.
He is a good friend, and I think he realizes later, we'll talk about it, like, what the root problem is, but I do think that in this moment, he's starting to pick up that he needs to be watching her a little bit more, which makes my heart, because I love their friendship. It's so cute. So they see the phenomena. Do you want to describe basically what is going on? Spark notes.
Spark notes. They have all these candles on the stairs. They kind of start to, like, contract. There's frost going. It's getting very cold. Lucy's feeling like the miasma creeping in and the bad taste in her mouth.
Yeah, and she also says, like, she's getting, like, this feeling of being, like, pulled
jittery.
back. Yeah, the thing I liked, I put it in, like, blue
I
for,
marked
like,
this.
I know, I put this as, like, ooh, this is good foreshadowing, because it says, being pulled back toward the replay of an evil event, something that had twisted the personality of the house out of true. Everything was moving backward, and the past had more power than the future. George called it time sickness. He reckoned that it was why it felt so unnatural, so fundamentally wrong. I loved that description because especially when we know about, like, the other side and kind of how that time works.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Ooh.
Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss.
It's so good.
And the fact that, like, George is, like, coming up with the stuff. Ugh, I love him.
So
He's
smart.
So smart.
Okay, so then there's a bang after all of this. Lucy is calling George's name but doesn't hear anything, which is hella creepy.
She is worried about him. She's like, maybe he didn't get back to the circle in time. Maybe whatever is coming up the stairs got him. So she steps out of her chains and, like, comes over to the banister and kind of looks down to see if she can see George's lantern, if she can see him standing outside, if she can see him on the floor, you know, any of that. And all she sees is, like, 2 hands, one behind the other, coming up the staircase. You know, like, when you're running up the staircase, you grab it and pull yourself up. That's what she sees. And all of a sudden, Skull is like, Lucy, you should come over here. And
Skull trying to save
Lucy
her.
is ghost locked. But Skull does what he does, and every time she's ghost locked or so distracted, he makes her angry. And he says, but Holly would have had the wit to come back here safely. And then, like, snaps her out of it because she's, like, so mad. She has such indignation that she's like, oh, shit. Can't be dumber than Holly. And then comes over. So Skull is such a bro. He has saved her time and time again. He really does care about her, even if he is trying to manipulate her. Then we just see the two ghosts chasing each other. It's basically exactly how it was described. The little ghost is running for their life. The bigger ghost is chasing them.
And at the end, she hears a scream as if something's falling down from the top of the stairs. And then slowly but surely the bloody footprints appear up the stairs. This is so creepy. I remember when I listened to this the first time, I was like, I'm going to watch a fun movie after this. This was creepy.
The writing here is really good because we don't know who's who. We don't know who's chasing who. We don't know who's little Tom. We're just going off of assumptions that the little person is little Tom, who is the victim in this situation. But you feel bad for the little ghost. And we don't know the full story yet. I think that's just important to note that, like, we're already feeling sympathy and we don't even know this ghost's intention.
Dun, dun, dun. Which, another important thing to note in chapter 11, footprints stayed for
77 minutes.
Thank you. Did you notice it too?
Oh my god, the mental math.
7. It keeps coming up, listeners. 7. Hey, Alex.
7.
7.
7.
7.
7.
7.
I just think that 77 minutes is such an odd time to choose.
Yeah, and he hides it by saying, an hour, 17 minutes. Like, Stroud, we know. Hi, Stroud. Addi here. We know when you say an hour, 17 minutes, it's actually 77 minutes. Please tell us what your obsession with the number 7 is. Please listen to our BBC. Thank you. Oh, also, book 6. I'm now expecting book 7 also. It's got to complete it. So, Stroud, I would like a book 6, but most importantly, I would like a book 7.
Yeah, I would like book 7, please. And the footprints last for 77 minutes. They talk about how they want to measure them, but they don't necessarily want to touch them. And then we get this weird foot conversation where it's like, oh, they're small footprints. I bet Holly has the same exact size of feet. We should measure her feet tomorrow.
It's such a bro conversation. Just like the guys going, yeah, Holly's got that size feet. Yeah, let's measure it tomorrow.
Why are we so obsessed with Holly's feet?
But then we have a really good conversation between Lucy and Lockwood, where Lucy is basically fighting, saying, like, this is terrible. Don't you feel bad for little Tom, poor ghost? And Lockwood shuts it down.
He's like, I don't feel anything for them.
I mean, Lucy always brings up a good issue of she wants to trust the ghost, but there's also the risk of trusting the ghost. You know, I switch case by case if we should trust them or not. I love this time every time this argument comes up because it is just like you can see either side, which is good. And then we get to the part that pisses us off. We learn that Holly went into Lucy's room and cleaned again.
And Lucy doesn't have the time to have a conversation with her. So we're just going to talk about how people are not airing their grievances as they occur and they're bottling them up for later. So this will explode.
So they're in the kitchen and George and Lockwood are reading a paper in the Times and they find out that Ned Shaw died.
Ned Shaw dying, I feel like, establishes 3 things. Number 1, no agents are safe. No matter what agency they work at, everyone's at risk of dying. They don't even care if it's a main character or a named character. Because so far we've just gotten, oh, this agent here, this agent there. There was this agent in the past. This is a known character who the trio have interacted with. So, no character is safe from dying in this universe. Number 2, the Chelsea outbreak is getting worse. Number 3, we're getting pieces of Holly's backstory here because she talks about it's awful when that happens in reference to people dying. Happened to me at Rotwell more than once. People I'd seen in the office every day. So Holly has some trauma that she hasn't talked about yet.
The other thing, and it makes me mad, but I understand because Lucy just figured out that this guy that she basically knew died, so I'm going to give her a little, like, sympathy here. But Lucy completely shows no sympathy for Holly after, like, dropping that. She just passes it off and is like, yeah, how did he die? That kind of rubs me the wrong way. And again, I'm willing to forgive Lucy because I think it wasn't meaning to come off that way. I also think the thing about Ned Shaw dying is, I think the placement of his death is so interesting, especially the last chapter. Just had this talk between Lockwood and Lucy with little Tom, and Lockwood's like, no, we can't trust it. It's a ghost. All ghosts are bad. We can't trust them. And Lucy's like, but this one we should feel sympathy for because technically he's a victim, you know? Like, she feels sympathy for something that she shouldn't. Now we have the opposite situation. Everyone should feel bad that an agent died, but he was a big bully, and he wasn't nice. But we should feel bad for him because he died. So it's opposite. of what we just saw at the last chapter, which is really interesting of kind of like, how can you feel bad for an agent that was a shitty person dying? How can you feel bad for him, but not feel bad for someone that was a victim that was literally murdered?
Well, and then to flip that on its head, how do you not feel sympathy for a living person that died, but you feel sympathy for a dead person? There's a lot of implications here.
That's why I think the placement of Ned Shaw's death is perfect, because we just had that argument. So then you're like thinking in your head, wait, oh, this is good.
I appreciate where it is in this book and how it comes back into play later, both within this chapter and later in the book itself.
Holly gives a compliment to Lucy finally. She says, oh, our case is going smoothly. I hear you did really well last night, Lucy. And of course, Lucy just is like, our case. You weren't in it.
No, I thought Holly's comment was passive aggressive. They were just observing. How is what she did any better than anyone else? She just stayed in the chains. I heard you did good last night. All right.
Here's the thing. I feel like, and maybe I'm always interpreting this wrong because maybe I am projecting myself on Holly a little bit, but I think she, like, at times is really trying to get on Lucy's good side.
Oh, I think that's what it is, but that is not how it came off to me.
No, but that's why I think, like, at this point, she's trying to say, like, oh, I heard you did well. And then Lucy's like, I'm all right with toast, thanks. Like, she doesn't even, like, acknowledge it. So then Holly later, when after this, Lockwood's like, or Holly, Lucy, you can go with her. And then Holly's like, actually, no. Because, like, Lucy was just rude to her when she gave her a compliment.
All of their interactions, I just wrote, like, oof.
Like, there's so many subtle conversations here that are happening here. Lockwood's trying to get Lucy to spend time with Holly, and she doesn't want to. Holly knows that Lucy needs some space and isn't going to be receptive to anything she says, so she's trying to nicely avoid Lucy hanging out with her because she knows it's not going to be beneficial. And Lucy's basically saying, fuck you both, I'm important, I'm going with George. Like,
Lockwood's comment really rubs me the wrong way, where he's like, oh, I'm sure Lucy has something more important to do, and Lockwood says, I'm not sure she has. Excuse me?
Yes, Lockwood, what are you talking about? But to be fair, I'm trying to think of, like, what Lucy would be doing.
She would be accepting, this happened in the first book, she would be accepting all of the major deliveries. That's what she did when Lockwood went out and played salesman and George went to do research for Kumkeri.
Holly's got it, like, all covered now.
So Holly is taking over Lucy's role that Lucy hated. She was like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything important. Like, yeah, obviously, like, cleaning up and getting ready to go and oiling the chains and making sandwiches is important, but I don't feel like it's what I should be doing. She didn't feel like an essential part of the team, and now they have someone else to do those jobs.
That's true. And it's another way that Lockwood's, like, alienating her and not trying to. Like, he's trying to make their lives easier, but I think he doesn't realize, like, how much adding another person to the group
changes the dynamic.
Yeah, I think he doesn't realize how much he needed to involve Lucy in the hiring process. But we do get a George and Lucy adventure, and I'm so excited because I don't think we've had one, really. And I like how they're like, oh, we're coworkers now. Like, we can finally, like, talk about Holly behind her back. I mean, George and Lucy are pretty similar in some ways, how they, like, want to be. And I think it's funny how they're just like, oh my God, she cleans. Like,
and I do love, this happens in TV shows all the time, and usually I hate it when it's, like, about important things and it drives characters apart, but I love it in this book, where we have two characters who think they're both talking about the same thing and aren't. I think George kind of picks up on our conversation. Like, he was talking about, oh, Lockwood's not happy about, like, your response to little Tom and how you, like, are so interested in this case. And Lucy's like, oh, no, I was talking about Holly.
yeah. Which, again, I mean, I talked about this earlier, but, like, George went up to check on her because he heard that other side of the conversation because Lockwood had probably brought it up before. So they probably talked about it before she came downstairs earlier that day. So I'm just saying, George is knowing what's up. And I think now that Lucy has kind of pointed out, like, the whole, like, Holly hatred, then he pays attention to it more of how she's feeling left out, and he does something later. So George, like, honestly, he's probably going to be one of our best friends for the novel. I have some arguments against it, but we'll get there when we get there. But he does notice that something's wrong with Lucy. My only beef is he doesn't really do anything or stand up to Lockwood to fix it. He is trying to be there for Lucy in every way that he can.
We do hear a little bit more about how the outbreak is affecting the town. Basically, places that used to be bustling and busy are now literal ghost towns. And then we run into Kipps' crew, who are, I think, heading to the funeral later in the day for Ned Shaw. And usually their interactions are awful and they're always trading insults and they hate each other. But this one is so diminished, I think. They're too exhausted to keep up the facade of like, we're enemies. So it's just like a very real conversation. And Kipps, who usually is like all over Deepak and Deepak's doing this right and I'm a supervisor and I'm at a prestigious agency.
He's completely against it now.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what the hell these leaders are thinking. The Chelsea outbreak is getting worse. We have no idea what's causing it. We have no idea what the pattern is. And their idea is to throw a carnival in the middle of it to show people are safe. He's like, what the fuck are they thinking? Like, that is such a dystopian thought of like leaders being like, oh, there's a pandemic. Let's throw a party. So stupid.
Yeah, and it's the first time I remember when I read these novels, I was like, Kipps might be a really good addition to the Lockwood and Co team because he does see things similar to how George, Lockwood, and Lucy would see it. They'd see this parade, mainly Lucy and George, they'd see it and go, this is freaking dumb. You know, Lockwood would see it, but he'd see it more of as a networking opportunity. Let's be honest. They also, Kipps says that he has a list of all these different outbreak locations. And George is like, oh, well, can I see it? And they're like, we're not going to give it to you. Like, what's the point of giving it to you? And George has like a bomb moment.
Spoiler, this is probably my favorite part of these chapters.
Really?
Yeah, because George stands up and he's like, I don't care if you look at it and do the research, but don't throw it away. Like, people are dying. If you're not going to take the time to look at it, give it to me because I will look into it. Why would you waste the time by throwing this information away? Even if you can't glean anything from it, information is information. And we're at a point now where, like, people are dying. So don't be dumb. Don't let our differences hold us against each other. Give me the fucking list.
I love George. It's just a great
He even
moment.
stamps his foot and everyone's like, well, damn.
Yeah.
And then
it's like,
Kipps gives him the list.
yeah, it's like, just give him the fucking list.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to notice about Kipps in this whole interaction is that he is a bit sassy, but he reminds me of Miss Wintergarden in that he is also penting up his emotions by using like this kind of standoffishness, like, I know what I'm doing persona to avoid the fears of how he's really feeling. Which is really sad. So then they get to the National Archives, and I'm so proud of Lucy. George has taught her so well. She's doing some Wintergarden research while George does some Orpheus Society research.
I love that they go in and they're like, yeah, we're going to look up this Wintergarden house and see if we can find any information about Little Tom and all of these society papers and all of these magazines. And they both have their own secret projects that they want to get into. Lucy's like, oh, I want to look up Lockwood.
Yeah, she wasn't even thinking about that ahead of time. And this has been my question for a while, and I've asked it online, and I'm just very curious. Do you think George researched his parents at all?
I think he did.
I think so too.
We had this discussion. I think it'd be very out of character for him to have a mystery and not look into it at all. I'm sure he looked into the part that and found exactly what Lucy found in this section and was like, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
You'll tell me the rest in due time.
Yeah. Because, like, George would be respectful enough not to, like, bring it up and be like, why didn't you tell me this? Or can you tell me this? But
I skipped over something that I wanted to mention. We talk about ancient history, like with the archives, and that's how what Lockwood said about his sister, and that was only 6 years ago. And then we talk about how this trauma has influenced his entire life and changed his character fundamentally, and how a lot of his decisions are based on this past trauma. And then there's a line of course, Holly Monroe backed him up today. She wanted the thing destroyed, no questions asked. This is my problem with Lucy. She automatically assumes that Holly agreed with Lockwood because she's like ass kissing or he's the boss. But she makes a note of, oh, Lockwood's trauma has influenced all of decisions and that's why he feels that way. Why did she not question at all if Holly has ever had the exact same trauma?
Lucy completely sidesteps Holly's trauma, and even when, like, Lockwood brings it up to her later, she doesn't really care.
It's frustrating. I get that she's jealous, so everything's going to be colored in a wrong light for her, but I'm like, use your critical thinking brain, Lucy.
When she eventually opens the file, though, about Jessica Lockwood, she finds out about Lockwood's parents, Celia and Donald Lockwood. They were in a terrible accident, and the next part was that the daughter, Jessica Lockwood, or Lockwood's sister, was ghost-touched, and that the younger brother was unable to stop the attack. So then Lucy kind of basically figures out that Lockwood had implied that he hadn't been around, but then the article implied that he had. So that he was, again, withholding information, which, again, is the main theme of this whole book. People withholding information, penting up their emotions until it blows.
Another point, critical thinking brain Lucy. A, Lockwood doesn't have to tell you anything.
Yep, he doesn't owe you anything.
He just started sharing. Do not demand more than he is ready to share. 2, you have been part of cases that when they have been reported to the press, very important details have been changed. So why would you not even think, oh, maybe they got the details wrong? Maybe the person who fed the details accidentally said something different. Why are you just blankly assuming that Lockwood lied to you? And then also jumping back, while Lucy is looking up Jessica Lockwood, George is looking up the Orpheus Society. And I think that's the first time they talk about like, oh, the Orpheus Society is a club that is looking into the problem and the other side. I think that's the first time we ever hear the term the other side.
Yeah.
Chapter 12.
Chapter 12. They're going to get ready to head back to the house to actually take on the case. And Lucy comes home to find that Holly is in an agent work belt. She's got a leather coat on, which is apparently Lockwood's that she's borrowing. She's got like black fingerless glove on. She's got like another like wool sweater on. And honestly, I was thinking of this image and I was like, slay. She probably looks so cute.
Oh, she probably looks adorable. But she makes this comment, which is like the kiss of death. I'm not sure if she knows that Lucy likes Lockwood, but she's like, oh, this sweater smells like him.
Yeah, I don't think she's picking up that Lucy likes Lockwood yet.
Girl, you're oblivious. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Lucy learns from Lockwood that Holly's joining them tonight. And Lucy automatically, like, I mean, I understand Lucy that she's a little hesitant to want Holly to be there because, 1, she is hired as an assistant, and 2, like Lockwood mentioned that she has a little psychic ability. I also would be a little hesitant to have someone that we've been on this case like for one night and it seemed really intense. To have someone that it doesn't have like extreme talent, especially like Night Watch kids would probably be equivalent to Holly's talent. At least that's how I was assuming it. And they did not really do well. Like, I also would be concerned.
We do get some more pieces about Holly. She got her 1st and 2nd grade certifications and did some rapier training. So she's not even a level 4 agent, which was a big deal with Lucy in the first book. Especially in the TV show. I would be so interested to see how this plays out. But then we hear Lucy's like, well, this is much more than a type 1. You know, it's much more formidable. And Holly talks about how she was in the Holland Park cellar case, which was like a pretty significant case. Seemed pretty scary. They got stuck in the basement. And then Lucy immediately discounts that and was like, well, this is much worse.
Both times. She discounts her. She interrupts her.
Lucy's being kind of a jerk.
I mean, I'm going to put this in perspective. If this was a man cutting off a woman like this, everyone would be pissed at this guy and be like he's trying to mansplain her, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Lucy, you don't like Holly. Get over it. You're being really rude. Ugh, it pisses me off. Lucy's responses are making me feel reminiscent of George in book 1, but like George never really cut her off.
Once again, we leave George behind. Why are we leaving George behind when he's out doing research? I don't understand. This is how the house caught on fire in book 1. Let's not rehash those mistakes. But they get to the house. Lucy is very annoyed and has a ton of negative feelings. And then there's a line that is foreshadowing for the rest of this book. Bad things happened to agents who didn't keep their emotions under control. Let's just think about that.
Let's just put a pin in that.
Let's just marinate on that for 5 chapters or however long it takes. Then we get the moment that we talked about earlier where everyone's kind of looking around seeing if they can find any source before it gets too dark. Lucy says maybe the tiles are the source where Tom fell at the end because they don't exactly know where he died, so they don't know which floor would have the source. Could be where he was initially stabbed, could be where he ended up, could be at the top of the floor if that's where he died. And then Holly has the idea maybe it's the staircase because he bled and there was the chase up the staircase, that it could be the source itself. And Lockwood is like, ooh, maybe. Don't know how we tell our client that our entire staircase has to go. And Lucy's like, I never heard of a source that big. Immediately shuts her down. Doesn't even entertain the possibility.
I know.
And then she makes it even worse where later they're like, oh, what can I do? And Lucy's like trying to put her in her place and was like, I am so thirsty. Can you perhaps go make me a cup of tea? And while you're at it, if you could rustle up some biscuits. That'd be great. Girl fighting.
The audio narrator for this says it exactly how I read it the first time, which is like, tell you what, I'm actually really parched. Could you go get me some tea? Oh, and I love some biscuits. Thanks, Holly. A really fake jab. And again, my proof that Holly is a people pleaser. She could have just been like, okay, and like left. It says that she's smiling, a compliant smile, and saying, certainly, Lucy. She is trying to be as pleasant as possible. She's a people pleaser that is trying to withhold her emotions this entire time and make peace with Lucy. And to a point, people pleasers can't keep it in. I know this because I don't get mad at people. I hold it in. So, like, I understand how Holly is, like, trying so hard to, like, be nice to Lucy and not let her emotions get the best of her.
And then Lucy turns around as soon as Holly leaves and is like, I'm so glad she's here, but I'm worried for her sake. I think Lockwood knows, because she even says, like, well, she almost tripped over her rapier earlier, and she's, like, laughing about it. She has this little grin. Lockwood sees it, and she turns away, and Lockwood's like, okay, well, I'll just keep her in my circle tonight. And that pisses Lucy off.
It just annoys me so much. Anyways, George hasn't turned up, but they all go to their separate circles. The whole occurrence happens again, the whole phenomenon. Phenomenon. Is that phenomenon?
Phenomena. Do, do,
Do, do, do. Phenomena. Dun, 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 dun. Phenomena. It's little time. Oh, it's not little time. Spoiler. Okay, anyways. Lucy is again in her circle, like looking around, and she sees the ghost at the end just like staring at her, which is terrifying. And like once the phenomena is over, the footprints are all around her circle.
That freaks me out. Because she had this brief connection where she locked eyes with the ghost. She didn't see it running around her, but like the footprints showed up. So it's like targeting her. My question is, all of these emotions that Lucy's feeling, do we think that is influenced by the ghost? She has anger, she's feeling isolated, a lot of self-doubt, or do we think that's just her own emotions that are being heightened during this case?
I think it's a bit of both. I think like a lot of the anger is definitely being fueled by what's happening, but I do think that her other emotions are making the situation worse. So it's making her more susceptible to this ghost wanting to reach out to her.
One more thing I want to note. The little ghost who is being chased and pursued by the bigger ghost. She says it is a lad no older than Lockwood with a beautiful bone white face. She is making comparisons to Lockwood, and I think that is going to trigger her sympathy. She has already victimized this ghost. Again, the story kind of fits, because we don't know anything yet, because George hasn't come back. But she is projecting this story onto ghosts, and it's like, oh, this little ghost is getting chased, and he's a victim. He got murdered for no reason, and he looks like Lockwood.
I probably would have also made the mistake, because I'm dumb. As Lucy, like, I would have thought the same thing.
That's what it's set up for.
That's just some angst and trauma right there. Whew. Okay. Just put a pin in that for later.
So they start to kind of clean up. They go back down. Everyone meets up. They get, like, their directives. Lucy is sent back upstairs to start salt washing some of the stairs and the landing. And she notices that the footprints disappear. The haunting is changed, so the footprints aren't lingering, and while she's like cleaning, she's out of her circle. She kind of counts to seven, and looks up and she sees the little ghost staring at her. So what does she do? Call for help? No, not our Lucy.
No.
She decides to connect to it, and she's like, well, my circle chain is disrupted behind me, but I can get there if I need to. And she's like, Tom, what do you want, Tom? Where's the source?
And he's like, I'll tell. And she's like, well, tell me what? What?
So she's like, the only reasonable action here is
to drop my rapier
away so I can talk to him, because it's interfering.
And again, my consistent theory is that when she's connecting with this ghost, she's at least a little bit possessed by them in some way, shape, or form, to where she feels so comfortable that she can, like, let all of these guards down. Because I don't think if she was in her right mind, she would do that.
She's congratulating herself. She's like, my theory's right. As long as you accept the fear and accept the risk, they will talk to you. And this ghost is getting closer and closer and smiling at her and keeps saying, I'll tell you. In the background, we hear George arrive. And he's like, where's Lucy? I have some news.
Because he knows what she's probably doing.
The news is that they got the entire story wrong. And little Tom was a joke, because it was for the bigger guy, the bigger ghost that was chasing the little ghost. And the little ghost is Robert Cook.
Yeah, the son.
Who stabbed Tom and was being chased by him. So the little ghost is the murderer.
Yeah.
And that's who Lucy is trying to talk to.
Yeah. Also, I really, again, would want to see this. I mean, this whole sequence, specifically like the part where George walks in to everything afterwards, mainly because I want to see the chaos downstairs, because George walking in and he knows, to then Lockwood realizing what Lucy's probably doing upstairs.
Yeah, being like, oh my God, Lucy's alone.
Lucy's alone and she's not responding, and they know probably what's happening, because at that point I'm probably George then is, because George is good. George has some more senses of like the miasma and like the terrible feelings. He's a little more incensed with like Lucy's talents than Lockwood is. So George would walk in and feel everything and be like, something's happening upstairs.
Then the ghost, after Lucy knows that he's the murderer, comes a little closer and says, I need you, and attacks her.
Blood dripping everywhere, and she basically like jumps over the railing.
Because she doesn't want to get ghost touched.
Yeah, so then she's like hanging from the railing. She doesn't have her rapier on her. She can't reach her canister. And then the moment that just makes my heart just like, I'm sorry, I'm a hopeless romantic and I just can't. But Lockwood literally leaping up the stairs, multiple stairs at a time, literally vaults himself across the banister. I don't even know how. Slashing with his rapier, takes out the ghost, and the ghost is gone. And there's like a gasp of pain from him, and he just falls flat on his face.
I want to know what's worse in Lucy's eyes. The fact that Lockwood got hurt saving her, or the fact that Holly was the one to catch her when she started to fall.
It's Holly and George, both of them. Like, Holly's the first one, but like George is shortly after, and they both pick her up, and I just can't, because oh my god, I love me some angst, but I'm like tearing up. It's just like, my heart cannot take that last bit. It's such a good cliffhanger.
It could have been entirely avoided if she had just slashed at the ghost or stayed in her chains or didn't interact with it or throw away her rapier. Her own actions are to be blamed here.
And even after all that, Lockwood could just have easily been like, no, you're being dumb. But for every time I'm mad at him, I love that he so selflessly wants to protect his friends. So now we've got to move on to the what if question of the week.
Our what if question of the week is, what if Lockwood, Lucy, and Holly had waited for George to come back from his research prior to starting their investigation at the Winter Garden house?
Okay, so two thoughts. One, George probably showed up later, and I would even like to note that George, even showing up later, he probably was sprinting then from the Portland Road to get to this house, and he showed up late. I think even if they had waited for George, I think what would have happened is they would have missed the phenomena. Bum, ba, na, na, na.
I don't know if there would have been a way for him to get there slightly faster, because it sounds like there was traffic with the Chelsea outbreak and then he was running as fast as he could, and who knows when he actually got that knowledge. It might have been the last thing he read and he like sprinted there.
If he had gotten there on time, let's say, and let's just say he had been able to go with them and he had that information, I think that Lucy would not have wanted to connect with the ghost. I think she would have known not to connect with it. So I think Lockwood would have been fine. Like, they would have been able to stop it, I think, a little bit better. But mainly because I think Lucy also would have been having the same thoughts that would have drawn the ghost towards her.
Even if George came 5 minutes earlier, I think it would have drastically changed the end, because she wouldn't have connected with the ghost. If they had waited and come, I think the phenomenon would have ended, because I don't think the footprints would have lasted as long, and I think that their client, Mrs. Winter Garden, would have been pissed off, because it would have been another day out of the home and she was already like on them to get it done quickly. But then again, the ghost came back to interact with Lucy, so I don't know exactly what would have happened. Like, would the ghost have been there? Would they have been able to coax it out? Or who knows? I assume that's what happened with the kids, is like they saw the phenomenon, and then I think that ghost probably came back.
Yeah.
After like finishing the loop, the death loop or whatever it is of throwing Tom off the stairs. And he would have come back and then, I don't know, assaulted them. The girl spilled her salt, so she was freaked out but didn't get hit, and the other guy got flown off. My question is, the Night Watch kid, and I should have brought this up earlier, but we're bringing it up now. The Night Watch kid who died wasn't ghost touched. He was pushed off the stairs.
Yeah.
So why is this ghost not ghost touching them? Like, the same with Lucy jumped to save herself. Did the Night Watch kid do that as well? And then just fell?
He might have. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what would have happened. Which I also didn't note this, but this was something I noticed. Is so, like, she mentions that, like, the Night Watch kid died, and then there was the other girl that, like, was just sitting there, and he's like, oh yeah, she had to go to, like, a mental hospital. Like, she's forever, like, ruined by it. And it says, like, Lockwood's eyes, like, glinted. Like he'd been tearing up. And that just made me really sad because Lucy brings it up later, like, anytime he hears about, like, you know, anyone, like, dying from any sort of, like, ghost occurrence, he gets really sad. But, like, he's seeing another young kid that has watched someone die and they couldn't do anything about it. Poor Lockwood. All right, now we're on to the favorite moment guessing game.
Well, I think you know my moment.
George standing up for himself.
Let me guess yours.
I don't want to choose my obvious one.
I mean, it's going to be Lockwood jumping over the barrier to save her, right?
It is. I have to give a close second. I just love the description of the whole phenomena occurrence. The whole haunting itself. I think it's written so perfectly and creepy. And, like, I could pin it down to, like, an exact moment, but I think, like, the whole entire case itself is just so, like you said, it's so well written that, like, you don't know which ghost is the good one, and it's just, oh, it's so good. But, yeah, I'm gonna have to say my favorite moment is Lockwood literally jumping over, because it just makes my heart, like, I can't handle it. I just am such a helpless romantic. I'm sorry.
It's so good. That brings us to our next episode will be part 4, Unrest, which covers chapters 13 through 17, another 5-chapter section. It's getting intense.
It's messy, there's drama, everyone's pissed off at each other.
You can follow us on social media at Instagram at 2bestiesread, Twitter or X at 2bestiesread, Gmail at 2bestiesread@gmail.com, and we have a website, so go visit that to see why we started reading this book, learn a little bit more about Addi and I, and catch up on everything. Literally, we have all of our links there, and it is such a good website. Addi put a lot of time and effort into it, so go visit it.
In the meantime, let us know. What are your thoughts on this section? What do you think about Holly? Do you think that she's a good addition? Are you similar to Team Edward or Team Jacob? Forget those teams. We now have Team Holly or Team Lucy. Or are you Team George, like us?
Would you eat a whole wheat waffle if Holly offered you one?
Do you also want carrot cake? Because that's all I can think of now.
Would you be mad if Holly went into your room and cleaned? Or would you secretly be glad that you didn't have to fold the laundry yourself?
Do you like saggy clothes? I love them. Do you like a little dress? I like to be fancy once in a while. What about you, Alex?
I could go both ways. I do like saggy pajamas, let me be honest.
We do like saggy pajamas. Do you also say phenomena? Ba-ba-na-na-na.
Banana.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for being my bestie.
Oh my god. Thanks for being my bestie. That was incredible.
You're welcome. That's
gonna be in my head all the time now. Whenever we say phenomena in this book, I'm gonna go off.
We gotta do it every time now. Phenomena.
Thanks for listening to TBR.
Be sure to follow us on the socials at 2bestiesread.
Got any suggestions for the other series we should look at? Email us at 2bestiesread@gmail.com.
Join us next week as we read